Hello, welcome to Bharat TV and welcome to our wonderful show Rubaru, where we introduce you to some amazing and inspiring personalities. And we do this with the hope that all of us can walk away from these conversations feeling energized and inspired by the life journeys and accomplishments of these personalities. Today, I have a very, very special guest on our show today. Her name is Damyanti Biswas, and she's an author and a very entertaining storyteller. Her first book, You Beneath Your Skin, was an instant bestseller, and she has just released her second book, The Blue Bar. So I'm not going to talk a lot about her and her books right now because I'm eager for you to meet her right away. So let's dive right into our conversation and get to know Damyanti a little bit better. Damyanti, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Deepika, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It feels like I now need to live up to it. So let's
Oh,
go.
I'm sure you will live up to it and more. Let's get started. I'm eager for our audience to get to know you, so I don't want to waste any time. Tell us a little. I want to weave your story through your life journey, and then we'll talk about your books, which I know that our viewers are going to absolutely love hearing about. And if they haven't read them, I know they're going to jump off their seats and go to the bookstore and want to read it. So let me start, let me start with your childhood. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and how that impacted your current journey as an author.
So I grew up in a dust bowl little town in central India called Bhilai, and it was a steel town and a dry town where there was not a lot of culture. There's not a lot of things going on when I was a child, and my family tells me that my love for reading started very very early, and I don't remember this, but apparently at 3 years old you could give me an Amar Chitra Katha, one of those comics, and you could tell me the story 2 to 3 times, and then the fourth time I would tell you the story. So I still remember, at least at 4 or 5 years old, there was this party trick that my parents had where they would set me up with this, they would turn the pages and I would uh, sort of tell the story. And apparently I did it before I could read. So that kind of started me off with my love for reading. My dad was a voracious reader, and we had like tons and tons of books at home. So sometimes it would be like my dad would spend the grocery money on books. So we had like a lot of hardbacks, paperbacks, so a lot of classics, Russian literature, French literature, American literature, a lot of the usual, of course, the British literature, the colonial influence that we've all grown up with. We had Enid Blyton as well, and we had Charles Dickens, but then we also had like Shakespeare and Bernard Shaw, and then we had Chekhov and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, and then we had Flaubert and Zola. And so a whole lot of these people who I had no clue who they were. And then as I grew up into my teens, there was, Albert Camus and a lot of existentialism. Not that I understood everything, probably understood very little about, what I was reading about. But I remember reading Anna Karenina at 13 years old and being scolded for it because it wasn't considered appropriate. But I kind of found that books became my refuge as I grew older and left home. They were the things that kind of kept me anchored. So by the time I was doing my college in English literature in Kolkata, the one thing that I loved was running away from classes. And whereas other people would go shopping, I would go to the British Council Library and the American Library, and I would be reading. So books, that's why they've become like my safe space. So I know when things are not going well in my life, and even when they're going well in my life, books have been my mainstay. And I think that has kind of trickled into my writing over the years, I think.
Oh, that is beautiful. What a great introduction to where you got started. And I'm actually extremely shocked that, you were reading at the level that you were reading at, at 13, you're reading Russian. There's so much about Russian literature that even now, as a fully grown adult, I have to sometimes give up because it's so hard to comprehend. So, kudos to you that you were doing that in your teenage years. That's absolutely wonderful. I mean, when we were growing up, Agatha Christie, P.G. Wodehouse, probably that's as far as we got. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So, tell me a little bit about how you go from this, voracious reader, like you said, to your journey of becoming an author. To me, those are two completely different things. I did hear you say, that you were an English literature major, so I can see your leanings towards that, and I can see your love towards that. But I consider myself a voracious reader. But oh God, give me something to write, and I'll hesitate. Forget about writing a whole book. So, tell us a little bit about that transformation from a good, solid, voracious reader to a successful published author.
Uh, well, I never thought I would be an author. If you'd asked me when I was 18 or 20 whether, who authors were, they were very, very far from my horizon. I was very taken up with, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And the reason I took up English literature was because I thought, it's so easy. Why is everybody studying so much? Because it came so easily to me,
All
right? All
right.
of 3 years, I cut classes. I went and sketched stuff, and I sold things, and I gave tuitions to my classmates and made money in English because I was like, this is so easy. Why do you guys have to study so hard? In any case, I've read a whole lot of the texts already, like I'm familiar with them. I didn't
Correct.
understand them, but I had a basic familiarity, so
Correct.
which helped me. So throughout my graduation, like all that, I was not in the least concerned about writing or reading or any of that. I was just trying to get done with my graduation because my parents said you cannot go to NIFT unless you've done your graduation. You need a basic graduation. Otherwise, suppose this fashion thing doesn't work out, what would you do? And so I appeared in the fashion exam, NIFT, and I did do the 3 year fashion design course from Delhi when NIFT only had, like, they had NIFT Delhi. So they
Uh,
didn't have so many branches. So at that time, so I did the 3 years fashion course. And I would have continued in fashion, but I think I kind of got disillusioned with it because alongside glamour, there's a lot of exploitation. There's an ugly side to fashion that I did not like as much. And so I hate to say it, but my parents were right. I got a job because of my graduation. I got a job in those days in this company called NIIT, which I don't know if it exists now. They
uh,
did these education courses for computers and things like that. So I
correct.
kind of used to read their books and send it off to clients, and that was my life. Then I
Uh,
got married. I married a guy who was in Malaysia at the time. My husband had a job in Malaysia, and you needed a work permit to get a job, and I didn't have one, and I had to go back to India for 6 months to get a work permit and all that. I didn't want to do that. So my
uh,
husband said, well, you want a job, you have a degree in English, I'm sure you can, write something. And I was like, write something? Not really. I've never written something other than exam papers.
uh,
And so he got this, he had read this book called The World is Flat
oh,
by
yeah.
Thomas. Yeah. And he said, well, somebody in the US might want some cheap articles, so you could start there. And I did start there. And I got the first article I wrote, I even managed to sell it. And it was like 20 US dollars. So I was like, okay, I'm in business now. This is money.
Yes.
So I started off there, and
Uh-huh.
over a period of time, I there was word of mouth. So editors started, giving me work, and then they would say, your language is, it's too flowery sometimes, and you're writing about domaining, and why is your language so poetic? And you're writing about medical stuff and all these turns of phrases. So go get it out of your system. Go to a fiction workshop,
Uh-huh.
and they were not very happy with me. So go get it out of your system. And I went there to get it out of my system. I ended up here. So I've been
So it had the reverse effect. Instead of getting it
yes,
out of your
not
system, it went
writing
into your
articles
system.
after a few years, and I
Right.
decided to, again, it was my husband who said, go and, write fiction, because I can see that, it's not easy for people to get published, and you get published. So go and do it. So I think, had it not been for my husband, I really wouldn't have been an author. So this time, when my book came out, The Blue Bar, I kind of put his picture for the publication day. I was not holding up the book. He was holding up the book. I took a picture, and that's what was put on social media, because I think he's the reason why I started writing. So, why not? So
Oh,
that,
that's a beautiful dedication, and what a beautiful way to honor him and his participation in your accomplishments.
yes,
Um,
I mean, he has a seminal role, and he continues to be so supportive and nourishing throughout. I wouldn't be an author today if not for him, for
Yeah.
sure.
Isn't it interesting, Damyanti, that sometimes there are things within you that you don't see that people around you see so clearly, and hopefully then they encourage you to do it, in which in your case, of course, that worked. What a
I
yeah.
wasn't very smart. Yeah, it's true.
Well, it's sometimes, just being too much within yourself to recognize, and then, somebody has an outside perspective on you, which is obviously a better view of
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Beautiful. So tell me a little bit about the characters in your books. So both You Beneath Your Skin, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about You Beneath Your Skin, but then I do want to jump on your latest book, The Blue Bar. But tell me a little bit about your characters. And there's such a variety of characters between both of your books. You see rich people, you see poor people, you see mafia, you see Indo-Americans, settled in Delhi, you see bar dancers, and I'm going back and forth between both of your books. What I've noticed with authors is that usually they have a specialization in one kind of characters. All the books will be based in urban scenarios, in with the rich people and that environment, or it'll be rural areas, and that kind of an ethos and those kind of people. How do you create this huge diversity and variety of characters, and make them so believable? How does that mind work? I'm trying to jump into that mind that creates this huge diversity.
Well, it always starts very small. So I start with one character, one voice. So with You Beneath Your Skin, I started with Anjali Morgan, who's this Indian American psychologist settled in New Delhi. And it's in the background of serial killings that happen in Delhi at the time. And she's having an affair with this guy, Jatin Bhatt, who happens to be the police commissioner of crime. And the cases get solved, and how their relationship progresses throughout the novel. So it started really with Anjali Morgan, because I kind of could not get her voice out of my head. I wrote so many short stories, short pieces that featured her.
Mhm.
And the same goes for the Blue Bar. I think the Blue Bar began with Tara, because it started off in a writing workshop where the prompt was, write about somebody who is being watched, but they don't know they're being watched. So that was the first chapter, where Tara is at a crowded Mumbai railway station, and she is wearing this fantastic blue sequin sari, which she's been given by somebody, and she has to pose in the middle of a crowded station, and then she has to escape within 3 minutes. And literally, that's all I knew about the Blue Bar when I started. So I kind of go from one character, and then what I try to do is I try to respect that character and their journey. So why was Tara there? who was watching her, why would they do that, where was Tara before this, and where is Tara going after this. So it's like I just kept asking questions and I stayed
Mhm.
honest with the answers. So they all really started small. I mean, there was no big plan that let me have this huge cast of characters. In fact, I would be happier if my cast of characters was smaller. But somehow I see India the way see India now that I have lived away from India for almost 2 decades. The perspective I have of India is very layered and very nuanced. And in India, the connections go very deep in certain ways. And sometimes, it's not just the familial connections, but we even, this does not happen for a lot of other countries, but we would, when we say an uncle or an auntie or a bhaiya or a bhabhi or whatever, we actually kind of end up meaning these relationships. Even people that we just, we meet, there are neighbors or whoever. So I
Mhm.
felt that for me, the characters kind of grew laterally because Indians are a very connected people. We believe a lot in family values. We believe a lot in making connections, and a lot of the connections in these books, they are not family connections, but these are found families. So
Mhm.
Jatin and Anjali connect in You Beneath Your Skin, but they did not know each other before. Like, they had a connection through Anjali's father, and Jatin is just his student. In this one, in the Blue Bar, Tara and Arnav is a police inspector, and Tara is a bar girl. So they meet, and even their connections, Arnav's connections, Tara's connections. So Tara has a friend who becomes like family. Arnav has a friend who becomes like family. So in India, these things happen, right? We have a lot of this. We live a lot by our sleeve through
Mhm.
emotions, connect
Mhm.
a whole lot with people, and we treasure those connections. So I think that's how my cast of characters keeps growing, because I think that's how we are. We are not insular. We are, as a people, we like to connect.
Yeah, we're definitely, I like to call them inclusive. We're very inclusive in our lives of anybody who is willing to, participate in our life journey.
That's
Um,
true.
Yeah, that's a wonderful segue into the next question that I wanted to ask you, which was about the target audience. So, as I'm looking at some of these books, you mentioned Indian society is very layered, and there are so many different nuances that somebody who has not lived within an Indian society may or may not get. Even some of the words that you use in the books, the language that's used. When I was reading, a lot of times I felt like, as an American reading this, are they going to really understand the nuance of what's going on here? So tell me a little bit about, as you were writing this, your target audience, because a large target audience, the viewership that we have for this show, are Indian Americans that have lived in the US for many, many years. And I wanted to ask you, when you're writing, do you have a set target audience in mind? And do you cater to that target audience? Or are you just writing from your own heart and hoping that, as a wonderful story, it's going to connect with the entirety of humanity?
Well, the thing is, there are a few aspects to this. So when I first write my first draft, I'm writing for me. I'm going to
Mhm.
write a story that I would like to read and that I have not read. So I would like to read it. So if that story doesn't excite me, I'm not going to be able to write it 6 7 times, tear it apart, write it again, tear it apart, write it again, over months, over years, right? So it has to excite me. It has to be a story that primarily excites me, and that's the hubris of an author in the first draft. When you feel you're God and you're doing everything right, and oh, what a brilliant story you've written, and there's nobody who's going to, write a better story ever. So I'm my first primary audience for sure, me. And then it comes to the editor and the agent and the beta readers, and exactly what you said, right? There has been a lot of feedback from American audiences saying, these are very complex terms. There are very complex names like Sita and Tara and Arnab, extremely complex. But Galadriel is not complex, So my point now is, when I was growing up as a child, I
Mhm.
was able to read Russian names. I was able to read Dostoevsky. I'm sorry. But we
Exactly.
all did it. When we were reading Enid Blyton, who
Mhm.
had ever tasted root beer? Who knew what root beer was, right? We did not. What a stoat was. What is a stoat? Nobody knows, right? But we read it. And we were curious enough, to kind of look up the terms. Nobody knew what Schadenfreude was, but we looked it up, right? So there was a
True,
term in italics, and we took the time to look it up. So
true.
we had the eagerness, the keenness, the openness to,
Mhm.
as readers, to actually look at another culture and say, oh, this is another way of living. Let me try and figure out what this thing is. So my point now is, here I am, an
Mhm.
Indian author writing a story set in Mumbai. The blurb clearly states it's a book set in Mumbai. There's
Yeah.
nobody holding a gun to your head saying you must read it. So you have presumably understood that this is a book written by an Indian author set in India. So,
Yeah.
presumably, you have a certain interest in reading outside of your own ethnicity or your own place of living. Let's say you may, be open to reading about Mumbai. So if
Uh,
you are going to read about Mumbai, you're not going to be given names like David and James. It is going to be Sita and Arnav. And I'm
True.
sorry, but people are not going to eat burgers all the time. They might. I mean, Indians eat burgers.
Yeah.
We also eat pakoras, and we also eat pav bhaji, and that's part of what being in that particular city is like. So I'm taking you to Mumbai.
Mhm.
Mumbai is not Los Angeles, it's not Seattle, it's not New York, it's Mumbai. And you
Yeah.
have chosen to enter that experience. So
Yeah.
come with me. And
Yeah.
I know it will take a little bit of patience, but once you put in that effort for the first, whatever time, you will
Mhm.
get in. But the
Mhm.
thing is, that's why the book has found a lot of appreciation from people who are willing to put in that effort, which means they are a slightly more than literary inclinations a little bit, because they have had a long history of reading, etc.
Uh-huh.
The others who are purely genre readers, who would
Uh-huh.
come there just for the sake of plot, 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 boom, twist, boom, twist, boom, twist, I'm
Uh-huh.
not the author for them. And I
Mhm.
don't think one author should appeal to everybody. If you've written a book that pleases everyone, then
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, even the Bible doesn't please everyone. So
That's a great, great analogy.
there's a book for every author, right? Like
Mhm.
for every kind of reader, there is a
True.
book. You know,
True.
the kind of reader you are, there will be a book for you, and for
True.
every kind of book, there will be a reader. Now,
Mhm.
it cannot be that my book is loved by everyone. So yes, there are a lot of one stars on Amazon saying the names are too complicated, I got lost. But then there are also others who say that, I felt as if I was transported to Mumbai. I was hooked by the story. When I was there, I could see the complications that happen, the complexities and the nuances. And that's what India is about. India is not simple. And I'm not going to make it simple for you. India is not a burger. Deal with it. We have nuances, we have
Yeah.
subtleties, we have
Mhm.
shades of being. We have a very long and deep tradition and spiritual history. And I may be writing a crime novel, but it is a crime novel that can happen only in India. Otherwise I failed, right? Because
True.
why? I mean, that novel should not be, you should not be able to take the blue bar and be able to set it in Meghalaya or in Kanyakumari, for example. It should not,
Yeah.
because It grows out of that place. That character is integral to that setting, and that setting is a character. So,
Mhm.
you know, I'm not apologetic about it, in short.
No, I think that's a great explanation for where the characters are coming from and where the ethos is, and I think that's a great explanation. Thank you for telling our readers and our viewers a little bit more about it. So really appreciate that. Something you said sparked off another question for me. So tell us a little bit about you're talking about crime books and you write a lot of crime books, and that's your genre, or you're getting into that genre now. Tell me a little bit about how did that come about. And there's a reason I'm asking you this. The reason I'm asking you this is because when I read your books, they feel more like a crime thriller. They feel more like just a whodunit. I walked away from it. I'm going to tell you in my next question what I walked away from them from. But tell me a little bit about your progression as an author of, you could have picked anything but a crime thriller. How does that happen?
So I did not start with the intention of being a crime author at all. I started off as a literary short story writer, and that's not a surprise given my reading, because my reading was very literary. That's the kind, what you read is what it's like you are what you eat. So you
Yeah.
are the kind of author what you read. So
Uh-huh.
I think that had come into writing with literary short fiction. And then Anjali Morgan of You Beneath Your Skin just kind of waltzed in and she wouldn't leave. So I kind of started writing. And I wrote a novel about her back in 2000, I think 10 or 11. And I finished the entire draft. And in December of either 2011 or 12, this the tragedy which came to be known as the Nirbhaya tragedy happened in New Delhi, where
Mhm.
a woman was gang raped on the streets of Delhi. And
Mhm.
those streets, the streets of Munirka, and that time 8 p.m. It struck a chord with me because I was that girl. I was that girl like 5 years ago. And what was she even doing? She had taken a bus. She was there with a friend. What had she done? Why did she have to be punished that way? And I think, like all of us, I think I felt extremely powerless to do anything about it. But it kind of changed the way I approached the next draft, because I was like, no, that's not what I want to write about. And slowly, as I wrote the next draft, I got this mentorship with the Birkbeck University. Singapore had this tie up with the Birkbeck University in London, and the head of their MA English would give me, as part of the mentorship, she kind of had sessions with me for a whole year. So every month there was a session. And then I kind of shared the draft with her. She's like, you got a dead body, you got a detective, you got people looking for who's done this. So what do you think are you writing? I said, a literary novel. So yeah, like I told you, right? I'm not very smart, especially when it comes to I was like, okay. So I was very disappointed, really. I thought, a crime novel? Really? Damyanti? Crime novel? And I was one of those, I have to say it. You have to kind of confess to your sins. I was kind of snobbish. I was like, I'm not going to write a genre novel. I am this literary writer, etc., etc. But You Beneath Your Skin refused to be literary. It refused every attempt I made over years. And I started writing it in 2011. It was published in 2019. Over 8 years and 15 drafts, it resisted everything that I could throw at it, and it remained a crime novel. So then I became a crime author. And that's the long and short of it. I also have women's fiction novel, which will go out on submission now.
Mhm.
So I'm not
Mhm.
really kind of limiting myself to the genre, but I have great respect for the genre as well. I think crime is a way that you can use crime as a scalpel to kind of peel back layers of the society, because it's at that moment of the commission of a crime, uh, emotions are extreme. So
True.
whether it's
True.
the victim's emotions, whether it's the perpetrator's emotions, whether it's the investigator's emotions, and when you're pushed, when
Mhm.
a character is pushed under pressure, that's
Mhm.
when, that's when stories happen, right? And that's
True.
when the reality is revealed. I mean, right now when we are talking to each other, oh so nice, well lit, everything, but take us to a island haunted and put us in the dark, then
Yeah.
we will know who Deepika and Damyanti really are. So
True. True.
something like that. So I think, yeah, that's where it kind of, crime, that's where I think is useful in revealing humanity. And I think that's why I'm glad that I fell into the crime genre entirely by accident.
Yeah, and I love how you explain that because the more you talk, the more I'm like, I am convinced, very much so now that using that genre to reveal the layers of humanity and the human experience. I think it's a beautiful way to do that because humans are at their rawest in those situations, like you said. So I definitely respect your answer. The reason, Damyanti, I asked you that question was because I'm not a crime thriller reader per se. That's not my genre. I think the more literary stuff is my vibe. So when somebody introduced me to your books, my first reaction was, okay, I'll take it. I'll see. I respect Indian authors. I really like to read Indian authors a lot, and so I was like, okay, fine, I'll read it. When I walked away from that, my first instinct was, okay, these are not just whodunits. These are books. So again, I like you in a little way. I am a snobbish reader too. When I read, I don't read just for plot. I read for the beauty of language. I read for the words. I read for a higher level vocabulary. I love it when I have to go and look at the dictionary to see, I've never seen this word before. What is that? So I enjoy challenging my level of reading. And when I was starting your books, my first instinct was, okay, who done it? I'll riffle through it quickly and I'll be done with it. But that's not how I felt at the end of it. I felt like I had read a piece of solid literature after I walked away from it. And that was the reader satisfaction that I got when I left your book. And that's why I asked you about the crime thriller genre, because I think your books are so much more than that. I think they are pieces of literature, and they are pieces of literature that are going to withstand the test of time. Just a reader's opinion on that.
No, thank you, Deepika. Thank you so much for saying that. And literally, you are my target audience because you are the sort of reader I'm writing for. Because when I started reading a lot of the crime novels you know, of our time, some from India, some from other places. The ones that really impressed me are the ones that had that depth of character, depth of motivation, where the twists were not imposed, they were not externally, a twist for the sake of a twist, no matter how implausible. So for me, I the reason my crime novels do come out with a literary aspect is because I never really intended for them to be just thrillers. For me, they are literary noir, and that's the genre I am writing. But as you know, in publishing, terms make a difference, so they would call it a thriller, because then, and to me, personally, if you ask me very subjectively, I feel that's a mistake, because what happens is then genuine thriller readers come there with their expectations, and they're like, oh, they spend so much time, I don't need to know about these characters, and all of that. And then readers like you would be like, yeah, I really don't read thrillers, but publishing has its own wisdom, and I'm not going to argue with them. They pay me a lot of money to do what I do, so it's okay. into it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I do feel that there's a lot of place, there is space for crime thrillers written well, with meaty content. The language, of course, becomes very tricky, because as you go as you go for pace, you have to kind of pare back on language. So to keep that balance becomes extremely tricky, because you write an entire literary thing, and then you kind of condense it, whoop, to like three sentences. And I find that very exciting, because that teaches me a lot as
Uh-huh.
a writer. Because it's not about what you write, it's about what you leave out and how that resonates in your story. It's what the white spaces do for your writing. So more than the words and getting lost in the words, it's more about what is the experience you're creating for the reader. What are they feeling right now? What exactly is their 4D experience right now? And that challenge really is very invigorating in certain ways, to cater to a reader who wants both, who wants the
Yeah.
literalness of it, but who also wants a meaty story. So
Right. Yeah.
having
And that,
accepted.
yeah, and that was a very serendipitous discovery for me from your book. So I'm glad I dove into those. Let me ask you one other question. Um, So you have dealt with what I would consider some very, very difficult, very complicated, and some very, very uncomfortable topics between both of your books. There's misogyny, there is autism, there is single motherhood, extramarital affairs. There are so many different, I would say, uncomfortable topics that you have raised.
Mhm.
What how do you feel as an author? What is it that you are trying to accomplish? Because there is so much being thrown at a reader from an author's perspective. Granted, the one thing I will give you is that everything happens organically. So I didn't feel like, the acid attacks were, thrown in my face or anything. It just happened organically as part of the story. So, the violence against women, I get very riled up about these things. But in the case of your books, they seem to happen very organically. Um, what are you trying to accomplish as an author by throwing so many so uncomfortable topics at your reader?
Well, I am not thinking about the topics, because
Mhm.
I'm not writing nonfiction. I'm
Mhm.
writing fiction. I'm
True.
writing a story. My idea is to tell a story, tell it
Mhm.
the very best way I can,
Mhm.
fully respecting the character and the reader at all
Mhm.
times. And
Mhm.
that's a very hard balance, because
Mhm.
you have to, when you respect the character, you have to write into your places of discomfort. So you
Mhm.
cannot flinch back from something that you find, oh, that's so difficult. Let me just gloss over it in two sentences. No, no, no,
True.
no, no. If the character has that in their life, they have that in their life. And then you have to confront it. And sometimes when you're confronting what's there in the character's life, you confront what is there in your own life. Because
Mhm.
unless you confront your own truths, if you
Mhm.
flinch away from your own truths, you will not have an authentic, organic story on the page. So the reason there are these topics in the book are because they exist in these characters' lives, and these characters exist in India. So a woman who lives in Delhi, or a bar girl who's in Mumbai, or a police inspector who's part of Mumbai police, or a special commissioner of crime in New Delhi, all of these people, right, or a teenager in New Delhi, or a child from the slums in New Delhi, all these people are real people who exist in their complete reality. So this character is fictional for sure, but for me they're real people. So if Anjali Morgan is a single mother who's having an affair with a married man. She is having an affair with a married man. That is her reality. And the thing is for me to understand why she's doing it, and what it leads to, because we are all defined not by our circumstances, our privileges. We are defined by our choices. The choices we make define who we become and who
Mhm.
we are to other people. So
Mhm.
if these characters make choices, I have to respect their choice. At the
Mhm.
same time, I also need to respect my reader, because any reader I come across, for
Mhm.
me, far, far, far wiser than I can ever be, because they come with their own life experiences, with their own depth, with their own learning, with their own vast reading, which I can never compete with. So it really is my responsibility never to talk down at a reader. So I cannot be telling them this is the topic and now sit down and listen. Let me tell you. No, right? So there has to be then this balance, which is your character is sacred, your reader is sacred. Your character has allowed you to tell their story. That's a huge responsibility. Your
Mhm.
reader has given you their time and
Mhm.
has taken your hand, because what is a story but a contract which we
Uh-huh.
sign on the first page of the book, right? I am stretching a hand to you and you hold my hand. We may not know each other and we may never meet each other and we may be centuries apart and galaxies apart in space. But when we meet on the first page, we sign a contract. So I must respect that contract that, listen, I'm going to take care of you. You are turning this page. I'm going to take care of you in that story. And that's how I let you sink into the story, because I'm there taking care. I'm always respectful, but always providing you with what you require of the story. So that's why, not topics. I'm not thinking of topics at all. I'm thinking of you, the reader, you
Uh-huh.
know, and
Yeah.
Tara and Anjali and Jatin and Arnav. They
Uh-huh.
are important, not
Yeah.
me.
And Damyanti, I feel like that's probably why, I felt like they were organically part of the story, and they seemed and felt and spoke very authentically to me, rather than feeling like somebody had just, thrown topics just to sensationalize it, or splash it around. And that did not feel like the case at all.
Well, I should
Um,
hope so. Thank you.
Of course. So I want to ask you a little bit more about the Blue Bar, because that's your book that has just come out, and it's getting some wonderful, wonderful reviews. Tell us and our audience a little bit about the Blue Bar. And obviously, you're not going to, reveal anything, but tell us a little bit more about the story of the Blue Bar and why somebody should want to go read it.
Well, the Blue Bar is about this feisty bar dancer, Tara, and this very dogged inspector, Arnav Singh Rajput. And they have a complicated relationship, like how you say on Facebook, it's complicated. And neither of them is aware that they are being watched by the same serial predator. So dead bodies begin to appear in Mumbai, and there are these sequins that are there on each dead body. And we know from the beginning that Tara wore a blue sari with sequins, and that's all we know. And
Uh,
then the rest of the story goes from there, from how things happen from there. So this is all we know at the beginning. And when the book was picked up by Thomas and Mercer, they were very interested in the Mumbai-ness of it. So a whole lot of Indian readers would find that it's very particular to Mumbai, because I've done a lot of research, gone and seen the roads and all those names which complicate my life with Westerners. Are very convincing for a Mumbaiker. And I have heard from many Mumbaikers that That's how. So people say that you can take the best of Madhur Bhandarkar and the best of what do you call him now, Anurag Basu, and you kind of keep them together. If they make a movie, that's what Bubar is like. So if you like any of these directors, maybe you could, that could be a reason you pick up the book, because a lot of readers say it's a very cinematic experience, because I'm very obsessed with the experience part of it. I want people to feel things. So
Yeah.
because that's what books have given me. I They have given me that 360-degree experience. So for me, I would fall short if I did not try to give, my readers that experience, because that's what
Uh-huh.
reading is about.
Absolutely. And, as you were saying this, the blue sequins, they're floating in my mind. And, definitely I would say the book is a very, very visual treat for sure. That has definitely come through.
Thanks,
Um,
Susan.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of logistical type questions. And it's Thomas and Mercer, so I'm assuming for Amazon Prime readers in the US, everybody should be able to get access to that book, correct? The Blue Bar?
Oh, absolutely. In the US, it should be everywhere. You could ask for it at your local store. If you request it at your library, they'll get it. A whole lot of libraries actually already have it. A lot of Barnes and Noble stores have it. There's
Mhm.
the store called Murder by the Book in
Mhm.
Houston, Texas. They have
Mhm.
signed copies of the book. So they have these book plates which have my signature with everything. So you can support, if you'd like to support an indie store. Murder by the Book does only crime books. They are an excellent, excellent store by all accounts. And my book is there, and you will have all these postcards that you see in the background, the bookmarks, all of that. You can order it. They ship it all over US. So
Beautiful,
that's
beautiful. So that was for our viewers. I would say go today and get access to this book, and I would highly recommend reading The Blue Bar. I loved it, and I'm sure you guys will love it too. Damyanti, before I let you go, I do want to ask you a little bit about your next project. What is it you're working on now that The Blue Bar is out? Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from you next.
Well, the next book is out with the same publisher. It's the sequel to The Blue Bar with the same characters. You have Arnav, who's the investigator. So it's part of the Blue Mumbai series. It's called The Blue Monsoon. And it's set in Mumbai's monsoon season. And it talks about the hair industry, caste systems, and castration. Yeah, you heard that last word, right? So, that's what that book is about. And of course, Arnav Singh Rajput is still there.
Wow, you don't shy away from any difficult topic, do you?
Yeah, I mean, violence is violence. If you've got a crime novel, there is going to be violence. And then if there is violence that happens, why not talk about it, right? Why not?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I like about your books is that they do feel like a reflection of our society today. And I really like the authenticity of that.
Thank you. That's so
Um,
nice to hear.
Damayanti, before I let you go, I do want to ask you one thing that just came to my mind, and I absolutely can't let you go without asking you that question. So I felt as I was reading your books, a lot of little nuances that a lot of writers are not able to provide. For example, when you talk about Anjali Morgan's autistic child, there was a sentence that totally caught my attention. Oh, he bristles at somebody's touch, for example. A very innocuous sentence, you would think, but when I read that, I got goosebumps. I was like, okay, to research something in that detail, because like you said, your background is English literature, fashion industry. So of course, I see a lot of color and clothes and all of that, and which is great. But going down to a nuance, a tiny little nuance of autism, It's just mind blowing to me. How do you do that? How do you get into the details of everything? This has to take years of research to to be able to then bring it out in the way that you do.
Well, it's with my really my obsession for details, because I kind of feel that when you are writing a story, for me, I'm creating a movie for you. So when I'm creating a movie which you kind of see yourself, but I'm trying to create it for you. So I don't want that there should be a set where you can see, oh, there's a paint and there's a gap in the paint, and that should be a hill. So there's a gap somewhere. So I cannot abide these gaps. So I feel that there are flaws in the blue bar. There is at least one big flaw in the blue bar which I need to correct it. So please, guys, take me to reprint, because my publisher wouldn't otherwise. But I have made a major goof up in the book, and I have zero shame in saying it, or maybe a lot of shame in saying it. But in my book, Shetty ends up being a Malayali, which is just not true, is a Kannadiga. And I made that error, and I still wake up at night having nightmares. I wake up with sweating, saying, oh my god, I did that. And I found it before the book hit publication, but it had already gone to print, and the editor was like, only people in India will know. And that
Right.
hurt me, to be honest. But I knew that it was not getting printed in India right now. Right now we are signing a contract, it will be available in India, but at that time it wasn't. And so I would really like everything to be as right as possible, because the fictive dream is a very fragile thing. When you read a book, you are going into a dream space. I am literally hypnotizing you. And if there's a sudden noise like a chalk on the blackboard screech in between, your dream breaks. And then you realize it's a dream, then it's like, oh, it's a book and it has an error. Do I really want to do this? Netflix. You know, I have to keep
Sure.
you there to keep you hooked. I need to, and I feel that I would do like that. Like I would find an error and I would be like, really? If she is lying about one thing, what else is she lying about?
Yeah. True.
So that's why I tried to be very meticulous. So I did go to Mumbai and spoke to a lot of police inspectors, constables. I spent time outside lockups. I got my entire story vetted. I went and took this training with the constables for a day and observed a constable's life or a police whatever's life. I spoke to movie directors. I got through to Onir through somebody and spoke to him at length. I went to the set of this movie called Tanhaji with Ajay Devgan, and I sat on the set behind the director, Raut, and I was sitting behind him and observing what happens like a mouse. So all of that was in aid of trying to not, for want of a better word, not screw up. So, like to keep things, to hold it all together, because not have these gaps where the reader feels, really. And I did have one gap, and I am eternally mortified by it. So, yeah, I mean, you have to get it right. At least I have to get it right. Otherwise, I can't sleep. So, yeah, a lot of research, both for You Beneath Your Skin and for the Blue Bar, a lot of research.
Mhm. Great. Can we expect to see cinematic versions of either or both of these books anytime soon?
Well, You Beneath Your Skin has been optioned for screen by Endemol Shine. So they are behind these series like Broadchurch, or if you see this Trial by Fire recently in India, to name a few, or so I don't know. Once it's optioned and the option is extended, that means they're giving you free money. In my case, the money goes to Project Y and Stop Acid Attacks, but they are paying the money anyway, right? So, which
Yeah.
means that there are chances for You Beneath Your Skin to go to screen, at least for India. So, something like Fame Game or Sacred Games, or that's my dream. I'm manifesting. So, and for the Blue Bar, I have a Hollywood agent. So, they are trying to. That's a big agency as well, Sean Daly.
Mhm.
from the Daly and Hotchkiss Associates. They kind of have been behind movies like, I think, series like 13 Reasons Why, movies like
Okay.
Secretariat. So they do well for themselves. I don't know if they can make an Indian thing deal happen,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we'll see, I guess. I am not sure, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's hope it happens. A lot of readers certainly seem to think that it should happen. So yeah.
Yeah, good luck on that front because yeah, I totally agree. I saw the books with my mind's eye, and I would love to see it on the big screen for sure. I keep thinking of new questions, and you mentioned Project Y. So very quickly, if you can tell our viewers about Project Y and your involvement with it, that would be wonderful.
So Project Y is an organization that I think started in 2000, and it was established in the middle of like a slum, where the whole idea was that they wanted to empower the women and children from within. So they would clean up a space, they would set up something, and they literally converted dump yards into schoolhouses. And they do a lot of work for the empowerment of women and children in and around the slums of New Delhi. So the stitching, the education, higher education support, and all of those things. And for viewers in the US, they have a branch in the US as well. So if you'd like to support them, you just have to Google up projecty.org, and you'll find them. They do excellent work. I have known them since 2007, and I've been volunteering with them, and they do excellent work. And they're a very small organization, very genuine, and very low overheads, very honest people. And a lot of You Beneath Your Skin, the setting of You Beneath Your Skin is actually Project Y. Only the head of the place is not based on reality, but the area is all Project Y. Yeah, they're
Oh,
actually the real places.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that factoid with us. That's amazing. And thank you for sharing about Project Y with us too. Damyanti, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We had a wonderful conversation, and our hope is that our viewers will leave this conversation inspired, energized, and definitely wanting to read the Blue Bar today. So thank you for your time. And thank you for your insightful comments about the background of the books. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me, Deepika, and wishing Bharat FM all the success. I think we Indians need to support India and Indian products, whether, Indian content, whether it's a book or whether it's a TV channel or whether it's an internet TV channel. I think it's time we started taking pride in who we are, not being ashamed of it, and just going out and telling our own stories and listening to our own stories and taking joy in them. So thank you for doing what you do, Deepika.
Oh,
Thanks for
of
that.
course. Thank you. What beautiful words to end our conversation with. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.